Okay, so now to make a poster. Because I didn't give you any poster specifics, I chose a canvas size around my spot illustration and type that supports it. So this is just a little bit taller than square. And then I brought in this background chalkboard just from online. Because I'm dragging it from the desktop in, it comes in as a smart layer. I'm going to grow it from the center. This is my digital art kind of achievement badge. Public service. Okay, so I've done that. Now I'm going to layer in this other one. Bring it in. Stretch it out a little. That's real pretty. Maybe not stretch it out. Maybe use it as the dimensions to crop. Now, because I got these online, these are not public domain. These are not from a site like Pixabay where the artists that have offered them up have given over their rights. So I need to make them my own. I need to transform them, make them my own, even though the background obviously isn't the focus of this. So how can you do that? Well, you can do it by altering them in a variety of ways. If I have to rasterize them, I will. But one is just compositing images together, overlaying the chalkboard with the colorful pattern, getting these kind of effects. Right? That makes it hard to really attribute either one. I can do it through blending with different layer styles. Very, very subtle. Maybe too subtle. Let's take the opacity back up. This is also subtle and dark. I don't even know if you can see it very well on the projector. If I need to, I can always rasterize and do image adjustments. Things like levels, brighten up the midtones, which I think helps play with the color, play with the hue saturation. Try a gradient overlay. I've been doing so much rainbow stuff. Yeah, so now none of these is very recognizable. But if I'm worried about it, I can do simple things that we've learned in compositing. I can flip it. I can rotate it. I want to flip that 180 degrees. There we go. And you just find different ways of making it your own. And I'm thinking of this as being like a 70s album cover, which should be square. And so yes, now I'm back to 14 by 14 inches square, ready to print. If I rasterize it, I can do things like blur it with Gaussian blur if I don't want those hard edges to be so hard. Because it can be a little distracting. And again, we're trying to support our main illustration. All right. So what things do I try to avoid in my backgrounds? I try to avoid anything that's too digitally clean, unless my illustration is also perfectly digitally clean. So notice, using that chalkboard with all the scratches, it gives it a little bit of texture. Even though it's a lot smoother than my illustration, it supports it without distracting. If it was perfectly smooth, if it was just a painted gradation, it would print just so clean, it just wouldn't feel as considered. So we're looking now in putting all these elements together for something that's totally finished, where every part of it feels as considered as every other. And that's hard to do because you don't always like doing type as much as you like drawing something. Or you don't like figuring out colors for backgrounds as much as you like coloring the head of something you've drawn. So that's really the challenge in putting this all together. And then when looking at all of it, you're trying to figure out how to improve it, how to keep working on it if there's something else you like. So I might go through and revisit some of these. Like I turned off this duotone layer, and it's very subtle. It just kind of darkens some aspects. And now with the background, yeah, I think I can use it. That slightly darker interior. That's a tough one. And I'll use opacity and kind of split the difference, right? If you have trouble deciding. So designers spend a lot of time doing that kind of thing. It's like a sound engineer figuring out how to master recordings. You have all the elements, now you have to just figure out what proportion, what things to use, which things to leave alone. The one thing I'm questioning is this really strong dissolve layer, and I've got to find it. There it is. So I've got that really strong on dissolve. If I just have it on normal, yeah, it looks too boring. But I don't want the dissolve to be that strong. So what can I do? Well, if I duplicate it, and then I merge them together on normal, didn't do what I wanted. I think it softened it a little bit. Let's try duplicating it twice and then merging the top two duplicates together. There we go. And then playing with that opacity. Yes, so that's a way I can soften that dissolve. You see, so instead of it being super harsh, actually it's not all that bad. Come on. Like that, where it's, because that's what dissolve does. It like cuts out individual pixels. I'm going to soften it a little bit. Like so. And that will help with the printing as well. Good. All right. So once you've dialed in all those fine-tuned things, you've got it. You're going to crop the outside of your shape just to make sure there's nothing hanging out outside, like that. Because now we are going to add a white border. So we say canvas size, and we're going to increase it by 2 inches on each side. Unless your poster is really big, then you might have to increase it more. With white as the extension, even though it will probably come in blank. And then I go back to my good old background layer, turn it on, and that's our poster. That's what I would print for my portfolio. You can sign it if you want. But we've tried to consider everything. Okay, I'm going to show you one more thing after this, but this is the finished project for us for submitting. So I'm going to say save it as a Photoshop file. And now I need to get my different elements. I need to save PNGs of both my black and white type and my color type. And then I also need to save just a JPEG of my finished poster. And if you want to print it, you can make it print ready, save it as a TIFF for your final portfolio. So to the desktop as a JPEG, there it is. And I want it to be smaller than 5 megabytes to put up to PhotoBucket. That's why we use JPEG, so we can really control the file size. All right, now I want to isolate just the color type. So it's a little annoying. I have to turn off a lot of layers, a lot of backgrounds. But I'm going to leave my cloud in there because that's part of it. And in turning all this stuff off, remember I saved it as a PSD before I did this. I don't have to remember exactly which ones were turned on and off. You kind of remember how much work you did to color it and to get it to where it is. Okay, and then I keep my text layers, and now I'm going to save this as a PNG with a different name. It's basically assignment 8 color text. To the desktop as a PNG. And then I need a nice clear example of the black and white text. And that should be easy enough for the way I did it, because I just take off my raster layer, I take off my color vector layer, I take off all of my effects, and then I'll take off this textural overlay. There it is. Oh, let's see. Nope, there it is. And now I save this as my spottless, as my black and white text, or BW text, as a PNG to the desktop. And those are the 3 elements we're turning in. Do put your name in your file name. It is helpful. And if it ever gets lost in your computer, it makes it a whole lot easier to find it. Okay, so those are the 3 things I'm uploading for assignment 8. These are going to be fun to look at. All right. And I will upload mine to the instructor demonstrations, but you'll just upload yours right to the folder. Same old drill. And then we'll label them 1, 2, 3 with your name and our semester code. And unless you didn't shrink your poster as a JPEG to be fewer or just around 5 megabytes, it should load without much difficulty. And we have to name them just to get them to show up in the right order. So we add titles so I know whose work is whose. So this is actually number 3. You end with your finished poster. You start with your black and white text solution. This should be all vector elements that you're showing with your black and white text solution. That's number 1.